We're going to start with the most trending news of the day, and that is by far Terry Bradshaw telling Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, cut it out, stay in California, and stay the hell away from Pittsburgh. He said the other day, quote, "That's a joke. That to me is just a joke. What are you going to do? Bring him in for a year? Are you kidding me? That guy needs to stay in California, go somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there." Wild statement. Incredibly bold and strong words from Terry Bradshaw. And it brings up, I think, a couple of questions, but a very big one right to start things off. And that is, if Terry Bradshaw, Hall of Fame quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, legend, a guy that 2-3 days ago I was getting asked, would the Steelers give Aaron Rodgers number 12 if he ended up in Pittsburgh? A guy that we asked that question because of Terry Bradshaw and what he did for the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever step foot onto a football field and wear the black and gold. And he wants nothing to do with the guy who we very much so assume is going to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025. That's alarming. That, just from a very narrow glance of just Terry Bradshaw, tells you and raises the alarms that maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have come and gone, who have built this organization and created it to be what it is, do not want Aaron Rodgers in the building. They want nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers, and they don't want Aaron Rodgers to be part of a franchise, of a legacy, of an organization that has built its team so successfully throughout history, who has had such staple pieces to not just the team, but the league. And now you're going to somewhat ruin that, put a stain in it by adding Aaron Rodgers after all of the drama that Aaron Rodgers has brought to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that comes with a full understanding of what is happening. But we've explained more than once that if Aaron Rodgers isn't at OTAs like the rest of the veterans, much like DK Metcalf not being here, much like Chris Boswell not being here, much like TJ Watt not being here, much like Darius Slay showing up today, it would be a very small story if it was one at all. Not one that we'd pay attention to. Obviously, there are some people like Joy Taylor who would have some very loud things to say, but I think the overall general public would feel pretty okay about the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers if OTAs was happening and Aaron Rodgers wasn't there. But he's not. And Terry Bradshaw doesn't want him to come. And I'm sure other Steelers legends don't want him to come. And if that's the case, who does want him to come? Because we are running out of people who do, seemingly. The fan base does not want Aaron Rodgers to come, at least a good chunk of them. Those who pay attention closely enough are looking at it one of two ways. Either he's their best opportunity to win a Super Bowl this season, or I am so fed up with the situation that I can't even be here anymore. I don't want anything to do with Aaron Rodgers. I feel like it's two sides of a fence. Either one of them is not great. And again, Terry Bradshaw's words are loud, very loud. And it brings up so many questions. Here's the other one. Here's the other part of this crazy, just disastrous Aaron Rodgers, Pittsburgh Steelers stretch that we are all on as we continue OTAs and head towards minicamp. Adam Schefter said on ESPN's Get Up that when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, nobody knows when he's going to show up, but it would not be surprising if he didn't show up anytime soon. And how long will the Steelers wait? That answer is even more alarming than Terry Bradshaw and legends not wanting Aaron Rodgers in the building. He said, quote, "It's May 27th, and their first game is not until September 7th when they play the New York Jets. So I would say they're willing to wait until September 7th, which is week 1 of the NFL season." That, my friends, is insane. Insanity. And if the Steelers did that, they would not only look like the softest, the most laughable, and the most embarrassing team in the NFL heading into week 1 without playing a single game and without anybody else in the NFL playing a single game. But could you imagine if they lost? Or if they continue to lose? Could you imagine how far behind the 8 ball your team is if your quarterback shows up in week 1 and says, all right, I'm here, let's play some games? And would Mike Tomlin hand him the job? I don't know, but if he shows up in week 1, you have to have some sort of confidence that that job is still yours to take. There's no chance you're signing September 7th saying, I got to earn my place on this team. No, you just wait until September 7th. You're here walking in the day before 2 days before they leave for New York. That is insane. Would it happen? I can't honestly say no. I can't. They've been willing to wait this long. What about any of it tells you, me, or anybody else that at some point they're going to draw a line? I don't know. I have no idea. This is where it gets very interesting in my eyes. Is that yesterday we talked about Mason Rudolph, and we talked about how well Mason Rudolph looks and handles and is handling the Steelers' current starting quarterback job. How it's by no means set in stone, how the expectation is he's eventually going to lose it, and it's not going to be a battle, and he's not going to get an opportunity to win it back. At some point, it's just gone, taken right out of his hands. And he seems fine. He seems like everything's okay. The team seems as if everything's okay, and that they have a quarterback. The team feels as if the team has a quarterback. Well, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't show up until week 1 of the NFL season, September 7th, and Terry Bradshaw continues to call him and tell him to chew on bark, and all of these other Steelers legends continue to come out and say, look, I don't really want him here anymore. I think we've surpassed this. This looks ridiculous. At some point, people are going to start listening. Those people being Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, Art Rooney, and everybody else in the front office, whether they want to listen or not. And I'm not going to say that they're listening as in they're doing what they're told. No, I'm saying listening as in paying attention. It's going to get loud enough that the noise is going to reach these people. And at that point, I think there's a real possibility, if it does get this dramatic, that Mason Rudolph gets a fair shot to do it and to win it and to say, here you go. Here's Mason Rudolph. Let's see what happens. Now, would he make the most of that? I have no idea. What I do know is that Mason Rudolph being the folk hero story that leads the Pittsburgh Steelers to the postseason and breaks the long dreaded drought of winless postseason seasons and makes Mike Tomlin good again and makes the Steelers a contender again. And at 29 years old, you get another 5 years out of them, 6 years out of them before you have to really worry about a decline. If all of that happened, the story would be awesome. Would be awesome. And in the NFL, awesome stories happen all the time. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. Sometimes Ryan Tannehill wins comeback player of the year. Sometimes that just happens. And it would be an awesome folk story, folk hero story, if Mason Rudolph became the hero of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That would be incredible. And right now, I have no idea if he's talented enough to do so. I have no idea if he's grown enough over the last year to do so. But what I do know is that he looks so good out there, confidence-wise, that it's such a natural, okay, this is nothing, that it's believable, that he's at least making it believable. And that's fun. That's fun. If Aaron Rodgers waits until September 7th, the Pittsburgh Steelers should have ran away months prior. I mean, if we go into June, July, and Aaron Rodgers shows up the day before training camp, no big deal. If he shows up a week into training camp, big deal. I mean, just issues. And the farther this thing goes on, the less amount of people want Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. He's becoming an enemy before he even signs and becomes a friend. He's got no chance to be a hero where we sit today. Mason Rudolph, on the other hand, is gaining traction in that direction, and that's exciting. At the end of the day, that's exciting. Do I think it could happen? I have no idea. Would I love for it to happen? Yeah, I think I honestly would. I think it would be very fun to see the Pittsburgh Steelers have a folk hero in Mason Rudolph, of all people, in Mason Rudolph.